Hello, everyone. This is Grace Cho of Entrepreneur. Today, I speak with Toby Usnik, who has 30 years of experience in strategic communications. He has held leadership roles in multinational organizations that include the UK government, Christie's, the New York Times, and American Express. He currently heads the communications for the British Consul General in New York. As a frequent public speaker, he is also the author of The Caring Economy, How to Win with CSR, and hosts a weekly podcast by the same name. He received his BA degree in History and French from Hampton Sydney College, also a graduate of UPenn, as well as Columbia University with graduate degrees. He is a Fulbright Scholar to Belgium from 1990 to 91 and is a Coral Foundation Leadership graduate in New York program. For 2 decades, Toby has served as a board member of the Empire State Pride Agenda Civil Rights Organization, and for 5 years served as a director of the New York Foundation for the Arts. Toby has also co-led the Communications Advisory Council for the Humane Society of the United States for a decade. It is such fun and pleasure for me to be speaking with Toby, somebody with such an extraordinary philanthropic background. I love his view in life, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Toby, it's so nice to speak with you again. It's been a few years.
It's always great to be with you, Grace. We're trying to pick up where we left off.
Oh my goodness. A lot has happened in the world since we first did this, right? I think it was like 20,
and you know what? A lot more is
2019.
going to happen, but I think we're prepared for it because of the nature of who we are and where we put ourselves.
I'm mildly nervous about the future.
I'm here to assure you it's all going to work out.
Oh, well, you always have this wonderful way about you, so I think you'll be able to spread some kindness, which I think we'll talk about today. But just to remind everybody, you've had such an amazing career. You have a big life. Let's tell everybody about your background. Like, where did you grow up and where you went to school and all that?
Sure. So I'm a Midwesterner by birth. I was born in Ohio, one of 5 sons. And I mention that in part because I do think of myself proudly as a Midwesterner, though I spent most of my life now in New York. But I like the values and the good fortune and public school education that afforded me and my parents. My mother was widowed when I was 2. My baby brother was just a year old. And my mother, a couple of years later, remarried. And with my stepfather's career, we transferred every 2 years, really, around the country. We were sort of corporate gypsies in the heydays of the 70s and 80s. So we went from Ohio to Michigan to Illinois, back to Michigan to New Jersey to Philadelphia. And then I went to college in Virginia, a great little liberal arts college called Hampton Sydney. And then graduate school at Penn, where I was both a study abroad advisor and financed my graduate work, an MS in university administration. And then went up to Columbia for a PhD program in international comparative ed, where I also worked in administration, helping to run the Reed Hall program, which is Columbia's junior year abroad program in Paris. All because I had really powerful study abroad experiences in my undergraduate years in Vienna and Paris, and then my graduate study with a Fulbright in Belgium. I'm a big advocate for study abroad. More importantly, I'm just an advocate for getting out of one's own country, one's own community, and seeing the world to better appreciate how fortunate we are back at home, but also how great and how vast the world is. And so that led me through, I didn't finish my PhD at Columbia. I got my MPhil and then went into the private sector in corporate communications and spent 5 years at American Express as Director of International Public Affairs. And then the internet thing was happening, so I went to run communications for a digital startup called Razorfish for a couple of years. And then the bubble burst. So I was out and went to the New York Times Company, where I was Executive Director of Public Relations for about 5 years. And then I was recruited to Christie's, where I spent 10 years running communications for most of those 10 years globally, and then also built the corporate social responsibility program called Art and Soul, which we'll talk about today. You and I have talked about it before, and that's how we came to know each other. Mm-hmm. And then just real quickly, I left after 10 years, launched a social impact consultancy focused mostly in China, because the wealth that was coming out of China, I thought, could prosper with sort of the experience and knowledge of U.S. philanthropy and philanthropic practices. But then COVID hit, things slowed down. And so I went back in-house at the UK government. I'm now head of communications at the British Consulate General in New York. But I also have my LLC still open and do consulting around arts and culture in particular, and a podcast of my own called The Caring Economy, which is based on a book by the same name that I wrote. So it's a very long-winded biography
Mm.
for your listeners.
It is an extraordinary life you've already had, and you have such a long way to go already. And so I think you checked off several of my bucket list kind of jobs already. But,
Right.
when you look back at your life and you were a young
Mhm,
man,
mhm,
is this what you expected to do? What were you imagining yourself to do when you
mhm.
were a young person?
Well, I do a lot of career coaching, and in fact, I'm almost done with the first draft of a book I'm co-authoring now around this topic, which we'll talk about later. But I would say two things. One, I have always been, if not fascinated or intrigued, I would say mildly obsessed by the other and getting out and seeing the world. And so, for example, very early on, when I was in junior in high school, I went backpacking through Europe for 2 years with a Eurail pass and a standby airline ticket and money I saved working at McDonald's. So I've always had that drumbeat of the international fascination with the other. And that has driven me throughout my whole career. So in that sense, I've always been on mission. I would also say, Grace, that I didn't know it then, but over the years, I've been able to define clearly, and I coach other people to help them define clearly the purpose of why we're on this planet. And for me, my purpose is about making a difference through daily discovery and adventure. So, your podcast,
Mm,
which I'm grateful to be a part of, is an adventure, but it also helps me learn more about you, learn more about myself. And it's that kind of excitement and curiosity that I try to bring to everything I do every day. And the truth of the matter is, we all have that ability, but sometimes we just don't have the coaching or the bandwidth or the oxygen to allow ourselves to think that way. And I think
mm,
in the times of polarization that we're in right now, I'm grateful because of the way I was raised and what I was able to do with my life to have that experience to allow me to at least engage with the other, to be curious about the other, and to get out and try and bridge or find solutions. It's not always fun or easy. I have even family members I'm estranged from. But I do believe I'm trying my best to be a bridge builder, an adventurer, a solutions person, just as you are with the work you do, which is so amazing. So let me stop
oh,
there.
thank you. Thank you. Well, from what I know about you, Toby, is everything that you do is so well thought out. You always
Mm,
take a very careful approach to first learning about the person and then figuring out what best to pull from them are. And
mhm,
have you always been this way? Is it the proper values that your mom instilled in
mhm,
you, or has
mhm.
any of this journey of life been surprising to yourself?
Yes and no. I would say that it's definitely a reflection of my parents and my upbringing. I also think that there's something that I've been driven my whole life. And I wonder, because I was so young when my father died, one never really knows what drives us. But I have always had a sense of urgency in just about everything I do. Sometimes it
Mm,
works against me because I could be more thorough, I could be more patient, but I just have this sense that my time on this planet is limited. And again, I don't know if it's because
yeah.
my father died young or what, but I've just been always eager to get going, keep things moving, and not waste time. And now at 61 years of age, I have to tell you, I feel it more than ever that the time goes so fast. And so, this sort of aha moment I've had over these past couple of years is the realization that while, yes, I could make more money, yes, I could have more time to do different things, I'm not wasting a minute of my life, Grace, because
Mm,
everything I do is purposeful. And I
right.
think it was somewhat accidental or just by habit or pattern or training or faith, but I am not wasting a minute. So everything I do is about something that's on mission for me. It's either, that adventurer, that sort of making a difference person, or it's helping someone be a little bit more effective or impactful in their own lives.
Hmm.
But I can't. can't even begin to think of the last time I ever said I was bored or I have nothing to do. That's just not who I am. It's not who I probably ever have been. I'm just
Mm.
really at a loss to think when that might have been. And it must have been at childhood where I might have uttered those words. But how lucky am I? How lucky are you to live in a place called New York where there are a lot of like-minded souls who are equally like, as a recent friend, Regina Scully, said at our friend Sue Rockefeller's birthday on Sunday, there are fountains and there are drains. Fountains are those people who just, they're a font of ideas and they get you inspired and have you doing things. And then you have those people who are drains and they're looping and going down, 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 down. It's not a bad metaphor. So I share it here with you. I haven't fully internalized it, but I guess the main reason I bring that up, Grace, is because I think in life we are all looping, by which I mean we are who we are. It's best if we can own who we are, warts and all, and see the good and the bad and try and emphasize the good. But as we loop, as I loop in my life, to hopefully loop at a higher octave so that we're not that drain, using Regina's metaphor, but really we're getting better, stronger, more successful at being who we are meant to be. And
Mm.
so I feel like I am doing that and I'm not wasting a second, which is another reason why I'm honored to be on your show today, because I think it's another example of how one can scale impact. One can actually inspire others, share cautionary tales. And if you care, as you and I do, about more than ourselves, then you want to try and share your lessons, your inspiration with others.
Such eloquently put. The one thing that has always impressed me about you, and it's almost like a traffic stopper where it could be the most complex, it could be the most sort of sensitive topic or whatever, but you're able to say it in a very plain English that people get it. So that's no wonder why the chief of communications role has been such a success for you. And tell me more about that. Like, how is that?
Sure.
So if you sort of look at it in the macro economy, I feel like a lot of people would need a lot of coaching from you and sort of describing, explaining the situation and helping others formulate what they need to do next. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So thank you. That's a huge compliment, particularly coming from you. I do think that my profession has allowed me to train to become a better writer, communicator, public speaker. I also believe in simplicity.
Mm.
So I believe in the power of three. I try to have three examples when I'm building a case. I try to think about no more than three things in a moment or in a day that I need to get done. And I think my mother used to always say, do flower arrangements in odd numbers. And three was a number that I always, kept in mind. So
Mm.
three seems to be a magical number that's worked well for me in life, although two is my favorite number for reasons I won't bore you with. So practice and also going back to that driving beat of not impatience, but just the urgency, the sense of time and how precious it is. If you regard time on this planet as precious as I do, then you won't squander it. So to waste anyone's time in reading a longer letter than it needs to be, or listening to something that's longer than is crisp and cogent, that's not really optimized for not only I think for storytelling, but also for one's interaction in a conversation or in a story. So I really kind of live and breathe that. I try to be efficient in my life and in my actions and in my communications. And the last thing I would say, and you know this, I can't remember where you were born, but even though I'm from the Midwest, boy, have I adopted the New York way. I just, in a New York second, that's New York. You might not like the way a New Yorker responds to you, but New Yorkers are incredibly helpful and will always give you an answer, will always try and help, but it's in a very clipped way. And I, I celebrate that. And I guess I sort of amplify it in my own communications, even though I'm now rambling on.
But you never appear rushed, and the
No.
thoughts are always complete, and you're an excellent listener, which are, I think, critical to communication.
Mm.
Having said that, though, in the age of
Yeah.
social media and iPhones and all of that, how
Mhm.
has that communication, the quality of communication evolved, in your opinion?
Well, particularly in the communication space, and it also ties into this book I'm working on. It's certainly it's become more digital, and the illusion of social media as being social, I call it an illusion because it's usually one way, not two way. Whereas when I came up in media relations, corporate communications, and I still say it to this day with PR, it's the R, it's the relationship piece. And I manage a younger team now. I've managed all different sizes and ages of teams through the years, but it's really paramount now that we try to help people that we're managing and that we care about to really remember the R in whether it's public relations or in anything we're doing in life, because we are social animals, and we're not digital animals. We're physical beings who like to congregate. And so things like eye contact are so important. The one thing I've never raised a family, but I give a lot of good parenting advice, I'm told by my friends who have kids. The wish I hope for any young person is that they will one day bus tables or wait on a restaurant, do some kind of service job where they have to deal with all kinds of humanity and cannot just swipe left or swipe right. And my brothers and I all, we were caddies, we were bus boys, we were waiters, we babysat, we did it all because that's how we as human beings learn, grow, nest, find mates, find career growth. So I really think that while the digital has taken on a greater share now of the practice for communications, the old school earned media, we call it, where you have to actually call a reporter or an editor, pitch a story, look them in the eyes, have a drink or a meal with them once in a while. That's where the real relationships grow. That's where you get to know each other better. They're much stronger, healthier relationships. And I think that it's not gone forever from communications as a profession, but I do think that the social media is now the tail wagging the dog, and it's not for the best interest of businesses and individuals, but it is what it is. So I pride myself in doing both, but I'm also in this book I'm writing on now with my friend Samir. We're trying to showcase the best of both analog and digital because that's what we need in life, right? So
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's the most valuable piece of advice that anybody can hear these days, especially the folks who are so tied to their digital devices. My goodness. I have to agree with you 1000%. Those interactions in those service jobs, so important. You learn amazing things about human leadership and things like that.
and presentation skills and being
Oh,
able to think fast on your feet and frankly even to be able to do math, right? Like if you're
do
checking
math and
someone out.
read, right? Reading the audience, making sure that you're
Yep,
communicating well, all of that good stuff. Now, tell me about this book.
I will. But then there's one other thing there. There's the serendipitous aspect of it. You never know. Aside from the transaction at hand, when you serve someone a donut at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, that person could be your next boss. It could be your next lover. It could be your next mentor. There's just the serendipitous nature of life that we
Oh,
preclude
yes.
ourselves from if we only live in a digital world where we think somehow we're open to the universe. But in fact, we know there are algorithms behind it. We know that it's not as simple as that, right? So
100%.
the book, my friend Samir Kanuga and I are writing. It's the first draft is done. We're actually using generative AI because I'm a big believer in technology, despite what I've said might have suggested otherwise. But it's incumbent upon us to work our technology, not let it work us. So we've used generative AI we've taken our concepts, our thoughts, our metaphors, our practices, and by generating what I call sloppy copy through Bard AI and ChatGPT and others, we've created this 11 chapter book. It's called Connecting the Dots: How to Build Your Network and Your Legacy. And we're going to self publish it, get it out for college graduation. And what we look at, Grace, is the importance of networking as human beings. We look at the demographic differences. Now, in the first time in history, we have at least 4 generations in the workplace. First time ever because of life expectancy. So there's a lot of friction. But we all just need to better understand each other and find ways to get along, and it will be fine. So in one chapter, we look at the demographics, the millennials, the Gen Zs, the alpha generation, the traditionalists, the boomers. And some of the safe stereotypes are, about the ways they've come up and their expectations in the world and in the workplace. Then we look at digital tools, we look at etiquette, we look at trust as the gold standard in any relationship, whether it's digital or analog, and how to earn it, but how you might lose it and how you could
Mhm.
rebuild it if you do. And we even touch on things like dating apps, because clearly that's a part of how we build our networks. And we also look at the this is a little new age maybe, but I think for our younger readers, it's going to matter. We look at things like horoscopes because your zodiac is literally connecting dots, right?
Right.
And connecting the dots to both build your network and legacy is because that purpose piece we talked about earlier. Because Samira's and my strong view is that if you have a better sense of who you are, why you're on this planet, what your purpose is that's unique to you, the sooner in life you can start to cogitate on that, think about it, formulate it, shape it, the more effective you are going to be at two things. One, going out into the universe and building a network that supports those goals, ambitions, that purpose. But two, it's going to make you better at receiving what the universe sends to you. So if you're selling Dunkin' Donuts and that person comes in, instead of just thinking like this person is annoying and they just want me to sell them donuts, you might actually find that that is going to be your next boss or your next girlfriend or your next mentor. So it's about really being open to both. We call it mixing and matching, right? You mix it up with everyone in life, right? But then the matching is when you add a little bit more strategy with things like LinkedIn and think about your own purpose. So we're looking at mixing and matching. We're looking at the gold standard of truth or trust. We're looking at the tools like LinkedIn and Blink and Instagram and how to conduct myself. And then we do focus a lot on DE&I because I'm obviously a very big proponent of it, and it's becoming apparent to me that the headwinds are quite strong against diversity, equity, inclusion, the three-letter acronyms of ESG and DE&I. And that doesn't mean we change course so that we don't commit ourselves even more to inclusion in our lives. But in a sense of networking and purpose, you can only be a stronger, more capable citizen, leader, parent, family member by having as diverse a network as possible, because it prepares you for all different types of people, all walks of life, all experiences that come your way. So the book is really meant to be more than just grow your numbers of followers on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's really meant to be a tool to help people reflect on who they are, what they want to do, what they think they want to do in life, and then chart out a really impactful way to go there. The last thing is that Samir and I are friends because he and I are both pilots. When we bought our plane 17 years ago, Samir was a 24-year-old MBA student, Indian American from Ohio. And we bought a plane. My husband and I bought a plane in California, and we flew it across country. And the broker hooked us up with Samir as our safety pilot, and we flew across country with him. Now, 17 years later, we went to sell the plane in October, and we were flying it back to Arizona, where Samir now lives with his wife and 3 kids, a very traditional Indian arranged marriage. He's got his MBA. He's a CFO of a company, but he still does instructing. And so we thought this is a perfect way to wrap up these 17 years of friendship. So as we were flying across country, Samir started asking about my career and networking because he's marveled at it through the years. And he literally pulled out his iPad and started asking me how I do it, so to speak. And I said, you know what, Samir, put the iPad down and let's just write a book about it. So we have, in the past 2.5 months, again, using generative AI, we've written Connecting the Dots, How to Build Your Legacy or Network. And we use the metaphor of piloting throughout. So,
Oh, that's excellent.
right. So the opening photograph is our screen grab of our flight plan, where we flew from Kingston to Arizona, Kingston, New York, upstate New York, to Scottsdale, Arizona. And, you stop every 4 or so hours to refuel. You've got to have your ducks in a row. And then we also talk about maintaining a relationship is the same thing as being a pilot in a plane. You have to be constantly surveying the horizon, your instruments, and then you also need to be both analog and digital. When you have, as we had, a beautiful glass, we call it a glass cockpit. It's very much almost like a Game Boy screen, all digital. But you still have to have the old school instruments, the altimeter and whatnot, because if the digital fails, you need to know the physics, the knowledge underneath that. So it's another metaphor where you can't just live in a digital world, nor can you live in an analog world. So we've tried to, without being too hokey, we've really tried to nail the whole pilot image and co-piloting with building one's networks. Hence the title, Connecting the Dots, Building Your Network and Your Legacy.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to read it. I have 2 thoughts for you.
Sure.
One, as I'm listening to you, it's for individuals, but there's also a company version of Connecting the Dots.
For sure.
You could apply the same principles to how a leader of a company or a company group, leaders of a company could actually apply the same principles to grow and make sure that they're on purpose.
But there's also, there's CRM systems and Salesforce, which is fine, but it's only as good as what you put in. going back to that magic number 3, and we talk about this in the book,
Yeah.
I believe in not just connecting to, I love connecting people and organizations. It's one of my secret sauces, if you will. And that's why the book became such a passion for me. And it was Samir who stoked that in me. But I will tell you that I do it in my sleep. I do it subconsciously. When I connect someone, I want to have at least 3 points of connectivity. So, of course, I'll do the obvious, which I will call transactional, but that
Yeah.
comes and goes, right? But if I can find 3 points of connectivity between you and the person I'm connecting you to, not just the task at hand, but like where you went to school or that you love dachshunds or fill in the blank, that is what makes us human. That is what AI will never be able to fully replace, but it could help, but it's not going to really replace it. So if you have 3 points of connectivity with a person, you're more likely to be remembered, and you're
Mm.
also more likely to be remembered more accurately than just, oh, yeah,
Smart.
he called and wanted to sell me something, right? So you're
Exactly.
right. It has an institutional application. We talk a lot in one of the chapters about Dale Carnegie, who I'm a big fan of. I don't know if you've ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People, but those are steadfast practices that I think are worth repeating to younger generations of readers, because things like the sweetest word in any language is someone's name. Like, that's resonate, right?
Yes.
Or be bold in your praise and then pull people aside when you need to critique or give them feedback. There's just so
Yes.
many ways to be humane, but also responsible. So we try to, again, blend the old school and the new school. In fact, there is one chapter called Old School because we want to shout out going to conferences and writing thank you notes and just making eye contact. These are timeless and important.
So if there's a business application to this as well as the individual, I think that could be wildly useful. The second comment I had was, the book could be turned into some sort of a series of tutorials to
Yes,
help the person along. I think that could
yes.
be really helpful.
And it could also be AI fueled, right, or generated, because it's such a. I've taught courses now in AI for social impact. I'm a big believer in it. But my plea to everybody is just start to use it, just the LLMs, the large language models, whether it's Bard or Bing or ChatGPT, because we have to be conversant in it to help shape it. It's not going to
Exactly.
go away. And I think, I'm not a gambler, but I would say it's probably going to be like the internet. There'll probably be 80% that's good to neutral, and then there'll probably be 20% that's ugly and bad, but we have to be conversant in it. And I find it to be incredibly wonderful, collaborative. It allows me to free me up from more mundane tasks in order to be more collaborative and more creative. So that's how we were able to do this book, the first draft, in a matter of months. And I hope that people will pick up that tune. And to your point, is a great point, Grace. There is an application for individual self-led sort of professional development, personal development, network development, and impact.
I don't know how to coin it, but it's something like collaborative intelligence or something like that, where,
Hmm.
there's emotional intelligence and there's all sorts of intelligence. But this is
Yeah,
the type of intelligence that's gapping, is where
yeah,
I see, especially when you mentioned the 4 generations in one
right.
organization.
I'll tell you a fun word we learned in putting this book together. We're talking a chapter we talk about the generations, an alpha generation, which are the youngest,
Yeah.
like Princess Charlotte, and you may remember the corn kid who came out last year. He loves corn. He went to the corn
Yeah.
palace. It became a viral sensation. He's an Gen Alpha influencer, right?
Right.
So the word that we learned is phygital, which is very
Oh,
important to this generation. So it's physical and digital. It makes sense, right? But
oh,
the more we
yes.
think of digital, we've been there already. We do things in these sort of ways, but I don't know. It's very exciting to think about all the different ways we can engage going forward. But I think for our generation, because we're similar age, it's the old school practices that we learn from our parents. You say please, you say thank you, you make eye contact, you acknowledge the humanity of the other. And so, underneath all these different programs, apps, platforms, buzzwords, there's still that fundamental desire, need, importance of seeing the other and respecting the other. And it's an analog thing that will never be, in my view, ever replaced by a digital solution. And if I may, this is where I'm going to get a little, highfalutin perhaps, but I just think we are all on this planet to serve.
Right.
And I mean serve others. I don't mean necessarily serving people what they want, but whether you're a person of faith or a CEO of a company, the only successful people I know, politicians, the only successful people, truly successful people I know, are people who are in the service of others, not just making money. I think that goes back to this whole point about whether it's analog, digital, and AI in particular. It needs to be of service to mankind or humankind. I really believe that.
I believe it with you 100% because we are human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We're not digital beings.
And your work, I mean, particularly what you do with artists, I mean, artists are some of the greatest shamans or mentors or teachers for us. So many ways, artists are the ones that lead the way, really.
Oh, and so you've actually created a nonprofit organization called ArtsCom.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, my baby. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I co-founded it with my friend Mary Trudell about 18 years ago. Our little baby is now a teen. When I was running communications at Christie's, Mary was the head of communications at the Wallace Foundation, a grantor in arts. And we realized that there was not really a communications network for people like us in sort of the culture and art space. And I also knew from Christie's that the only time we really worked with cultural institutions was when they were deaccessioning. And that was usually a fraught process. So we were kind of seen as the commercial bad guys. So the thinking was, why don't we develop a relationship that's above and beyond just the transaction? And really just, we have a shared interest in cultural stewardship, making sure great works of art are stewarded from one caregiver to the next. And so we started one by one. We went out first to the Met, then the Guggenheim, and then it's visual and performing arts, so then Carnegie Hall. And over the past 17 years, we've now grown to 76 cultural institutions. We are focused on the New York area. So we have Newark Museum in Brooklyn, but it's largely being focused on New York has been a plus for us. We also, for 6 years, had ArtsCom London when I was able to spend time in London and run it. That morphed into another organization and it went well. But ArtsCom New York is thriving. We have 6 foundations that are funders of the arts, 5 of whom fund us through a fiscal sponsorship of Bloomberg Philanthropies, Mellon, Ford, Niarchos, Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And now, this year, as a real sign of arrival, we've had the Rockefeller Brothers Fund generously offer to host our first ever retreat at the Pocantico Hills Rockefeller Estate in Tarrytown, New York. So at the end of February, we're going to do a 2-day retreat. It's taking great shape right now, thanks to RBF. We have the presidents of the Natural History Museum and the Frick and New York Philharmonic coming. We have a Future of Arts Journalism panel we're bringing in because art criticism and art journalism is shrinking, as you well know. So we've done these types of panels at ArtsCom through the years. We're doing another one up there. We have Susan Elliott, for example, from the American Musical Magazine, and Eileen Kinsella from ArtNet, and I think, if not Eric Gibson from Wall Street Journal, one of his colleagues, and hopefully Barbara Graustark, one of her colleagues from the New York Times. And we're doing a really important panel on the cultural headwinds that we're facing right now. So we have Francis Brunet from Pratt, the president of Pratt, coming along. I think Leon Botstein from Bard College, who's also conductor of the American Symphony Orchestra, talking about the headwinds, the blowback around ESG and DE&I. And, as the communication leads at these institutions like the Natural History Museum, Met, Guggenheim, Carnegie Hall, 92nd Street Y, as well as St. Anne's Warehouse and the Moth, we are on the front lines. And so whether it's Sackler money or George Floyd or COVID, we're the ones that are the spokespeople for these institutions. And the times are getting pretty tough right now because you have major moneyed leaders on these boards and influencing public opinion. So what do we say? What do we do? So we come together at ArtsCom. This has always been the premise from the start. We are usually the odd ducks in our organization. We're an expense item typically. We're maybe one person or a 3-person shop, but we're small. We're odd ducks. ArtsCom was always conceived as being an odd duck convention. So the odd ducks originally came together once a quarter. There are no membership dues. We just take turns hosting. And it's Chatham House rules. What's said in the room stays in the room. But we come together as people committed to stewarding the culture of New York in a time when, yes, at first blush, we might look at seeing each other as competitors for fundraiser dollars or visitors or media coverage. But the types of things we do together are truly better together, right? Whether it's we came in overdrive during COVID. We were on calls daily, almost like, are you closing? How are you interpreting the mayor's decision? Are you going to have a fundraiser? Are you laying people off? Are you masking, not masking? All these things. We were such a helpful network to each other that what was once a quarterly breakfast club then became daily almost during COVID. Now it's a monthly. And as I said, 76 members, and we'll have our first ever conference thanks to the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Arcos. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's incredible. How does one find out more about ArtsCom and its activities, or is it a closed community?
You can come to me. We are not a secret society, but we are invitation only. Once someone leaves his or her role, they are grandfathered in for 1 to 2 subsequent meetings, but it has to be the person in that seat at that institution who's the member. And then we have our alumni group on LinkedIn. But we don't have vendors. So, we will bring in a group of executive recruiters to talk about the state of DE&I and, recruitment or board placements, but we won't have them as members. We won't have a marketing agency come in as a member, but we will occasionally bring in a panel to talk about various aspects of marketing. We'll have the NYC and Co. come in. We'll have various experts come in to talk about AI. But what really happens is we usually kick off with a welcome from the host institution's president or CEO, and then we go into the topic of the day. So the December meeting was at the Natural History Museum. Sean Decatur is the new president, just came from Kenyon College, African-American, following the amazing Eleanor Futter and her tenure there. And after welcoming us, they gave us a tour of the new wing that they opened up, very much focused on education and natural history. And then this last week was at Lincoln Center, where we had Henry Timms welcome us, the CEO. And then we had he and the wonderful Leah Johnson, who's their head of external affairs, talk about the legacies of San Juan Hill. So when you have Lincoln Center and Henry Timms welcome you and talking about that approach to, call it reconciliation, call it just history, but we need to go there in society. And Lincoln Center is a great example of how we're doing it. And we'll hear more about that at the offsite. I hope that answers your question. A very long.
It does. I am so curious about, as you said, the group is at the front lines of arts and cultures, at least from a New York standpoint. So as an outsider looking in, I'm so curious as to what topics are top of mind with the group and what they feel should be done better, more of. That would be interesting.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to come as my guest at some point to any of the quarterly meetings. Again, through the years, I mean, it's so funny. It's so old now. We've always been on the vanguard of the technology. So when blogging was happening, we would have conversations around that. When social media was happening, like, are you treating it seriously? What kind of resources you're putting against it? Then AI. I mean, Sri Srinivasan has been a great colleague and collaborator with us for years. You may know, he's a tech professional, and he was once the tech reporter on ABC News here in New York. Then he became, and also the dean of students at Columbia School of Journalism. He became the first digital officer at Columbia University. Then he became the first digital officer at the Metropolitan Museum. And then he became the first digital officer in the city of New York. So he knows what he talks about. So he's been a collaborator and talked to us through the years on various moments and inflection points at ArtsCom. Wow. And above and beyond that, certainly DE&I, we have at least 2 sessions a year heavily focused on that. We had the new head of Chief Diversity Officer at the Met when she was coming on board. Libby talked to us about what she was hoping to do. And we've had a lot of panels with executive recruiters who are placing trustees at museums. And how are they really not doing superficial placements and, really getting at both the root causes of structural racism, but also dealing with the symptoms and placing people. So, because you can't affect change if you don't really want to. We are all, by the nature of who we are and the work we do in our institutions, are fully committed to that.
Toby, you amaze me. You're at the center of some of the best leaders across media, business, education, nonprofits. The list just goes on and on.
Thanks, Grace.
I would love to climb into your mind and think, like you mentioned the magic of 3. When you look out at 2024, what are the 3 things that you want to accomplish other than, of course, connecting the dots book in May, and that everybody should know about. But other than that, what are the 3 things?
Personally, I've loved working for the British government. It's been an honor and a privilege, but I missed the private sector where I came up. I missed the competitive metabolism. I missed the accountability. I missed the bench strength. So I would like to think in the year ahead, I'll be returning somewhere, somehow to the private sector in either a comms or employee engagement or social impact type role. I also want to see ArtsCom continue to grow. It's been exponential. And this conference, I think, has been a real inflection point for us. It's been profoundly gratifying to see the response we're getting from both the invited speakers as well as the foundation world. And that's before we've ever scaled it or taken it on the road or tried to do it really anywhere else. And I guess I also care about it in that regard because apropos the book and ArtsCom, Grace, that concept of networking is, I've realized how, and I don't mean to sound vain, but I've realized how good I've gotten at it in that I don't believe we're well served to necessarily pay dues to belong to another network or another organization. I think often I coach people, young people in this in particular, build your own sounding board. Right? Once you figure out
Yes.
your purpose, what you want to do, just cherry pick a group of people that you think would be the right kinds of cross checks or sounding board for you. And then let them know that you're officially holding them in that role and just let that be your guide because that's one of the benefits with the technology we have now and LinkedIn and other networks. You can find those people, you can approach those people, and why not, right? If you can get a
Hmm.
crisper answer from someone who is who you want to be when you grow up, then go there, right? Everyone got help along the way. That's one of the things I always talk about in my podcast with the successful people I interview. We all got help along the way. So it's helpful for young people or disillusioned older people to see that we all get help. You can ask for help and that there's not magic to it. It's just about putting yourself out there. And so leveraging it. So, and then the third thing, I guess, probably will be, I don't know if it's the book or it's just, I just want to do more of what I'm doing. That whole, anything I can do to scale my message, my podcast, my book, to try to leave the world as good or better as I found it. I really, as corny as that might sound, I really do believe it. And I can't think of a better way to exit this planet than knowing that we've touched lives, that we've improved lives, or at least we haven't made them worse, right?
Hmm.
So I just want to keep on keeping on. That's, I guess, the third and final point.
I think you are the epitome of all of that and more. So it's
Thank you.
been such a privilege, Toby, to know you as a friend and to hear your thoughts. This has been a remarkable conversation. Thank you so much, Toby.
Of course. And Grace, we have more to do together ourselves. I mean, that's the fun of it,
Absolutely.
right? If
We
you
have so
believe
much
as
to
we
do.
do, it can only get better and more impactful, right? When you share with like minded people and leverage these tools and share these platforms. Sharing power is something I've also realized, just as a final thought. I've realized I try to live a very transparent life. I like to manage my team so they know where I am at all times in case I get hit by a bus or whatever. But you can't have a younger person or more junior person learn the ropes as readily if you do only partial sharing of how you're conducting yourself, how you're making deals, how you're pitching a story, how you're putting out a fire. And so I have found conversely that there are people, I'm not going to name names or institutions, but I have found people that when given power and authority kind of hoard it or use it to their
Yes.
own advantage. We all use it to some degree to our own advantage, but I have found that it's much more fun and sustainable when you share the power, when you share the platform. And boy, has that come back in spades throughout my life to reward me both personally and professionally. I can't tell you how
Oh
many
my
people
goodness.
say,
I subscribe to that 100%.
yeah,
It's
so many people
absolutely.
still very much in my life. And that's that connectivity thing again. Like when you're with someone in a really connected and authentic way, those three dots or more, they're with you for life. You may not see them every day, but you just pick up where you left off. I mean, you and I are a good example of that, right? There's some
Yes.
times where we haven't seen or talked to each other, but we
Pick it
know we're
right
both
up.
on target. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Toby, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege.